Hello and thank you very much for joining me again. As a self-taught artist, I have had to learn the hard way, as I'm sure many of you have out there, how to do certain things, how to achieve certain results, and how to get the most out of your painting without struggling each time. It's very difficult, and I'm sure many of you will identify with this. For those of you who have been trained, you've perhaps been to art college or whatever, you may have been taught these things and shared experiences with others. But for those who are isolated and struggling alone, I thought it would be nice to share 3 of the most basic tips that I can to help anybody who is struggling out there. So here are my first really best 3 tips for getting started. So tip number 1, know your support. What do I mean by support? By support we mean paper, the canvas board, the wooden board, cradle, anything that you are actually going to use to paint, draw or use pastels on. So it's basically whatever it is that you're working on. And the reason why we need to know exactly what our support does is that it will react differently for different mediums. Obviously we have specific things for pastels and maybe for oils as well. We struggle to use them sometimes on ordinary paper. But for things like watercolour, you need to know whether you're going to use a heavyweight watercolour paper or a lightweight watercolour paper. You need to know whether it's going to have a risk of cockling, which means when it buckles and makes all sorts of wibbly wobblies when it gets wet, which is a nightmare. Or you're going to choose a heavier weight that doesn't need to be treated before you paint on it. Or there's watercolour board. There's so many different varieties. Not only that, but you've got different categories of paper. So you've got very smooth paper, which is hot pressed. You've got the slightly textured paper, which is not pressed. So you need to look into what is the best support for the work that you're doing. It's no use starting a painting, and believe me, I have done it. Started halfway through, thought this paper just isn't working, this is a nightmare, and having to either throw it away or try and fix what you've already done, which is often more difficult than starting fresh. So really get to know your different supports, try them, have a little trial run with them, play about with them to see which you prefer. You can often get lots of sample packs from places. There are certain art places that will happily provide you different packs of different papers. It's worth investing to see what you like, to save the heartache of having to waste a painting. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, check your colours. Many of you will have seen before this video that I actually do something called a splash practice. Basically, I get a piece of the paper that I'm going to be working on, just doesn't have to be a big piece, it can be quite a small piece, and I practice on that with the colours that I am hoping to use in the final piece. So example, if it's a watercolour, I will just squirt some water on it. I will choose the colours that I am going to work with and then randomly just splash the colours on to get some form of mixing going on the paper or the canvas, whatever it is that I'm going to be using, just to see that firstly the colours actually work together. So if you've got a risk of them running together, as with watercolours, what colour do they produce when they mix? Primary colours, we know the colours that they will make, but sometimes there are secondary colours and even tertiary colours. It might be that those colours produce something really hideous that you just don't want on your painting. So this is your opportunity to test the colours that you've got and make sure that they are all work together and that they're actually the colours that you like, because quite often paint comes out differently from tubes, pans, pastel pencils, whatever it is that you're doing. This applies to pencil work as well. If you're going to be working on a subject, perhaps an animal or a bird, you want to make sure that you've got the right colours to work with right at hand so that you're not having to keep breaking off and trying to find the colours that are going to work the best for you. So it's a really good way to test all of that before you embark on any sort of work at all. Very much worth doing and very simple. Lastly, check your mood. That sounds a bit of a strange one, I know, But quite often, if we are trying to do something artistic or creative, if we're not in the right frame of mind, firstly, we can find it very difficult to do. Secondly, we might find that we make a big mess of it, which makes us then feel worse. So it's worth checking what sort of mood you are in before you start. Quite often, the mood actually affects what comes out of your paintbrush, pastels, pencils, whatever medium that you're working with. It will have an influence and a bearing on the final result. So it's worth knowing if you're in a bad mood, don't expect to be able to sit and do a beautiful, calm watercolour. There's a very good chance that it's not going to happen. Maybe that's the sort of day for getting out some acrylic paints, have a go at an abstract. Just put the colour onto the paper or the canvas and play about with it and see what it does. You will find it gets rid of your mood or whatever it is, and also you can play with a different format. If you're feeling calm and steady and you want to proceed, obviously that's great, but another factor that comes into it is if you are feeling rushed, if you have only got a limited amount of time in your day to do some artwork, you are going to feel under pressure. So try and allow extra time for you to just get into the creative mood. It's about being in that moment, being able to concentrate and being able to focus on what it is that you're actually working on without the distraction of children, husbands, cats, dogs, aunties, grandmas, whatever, worrying about what you're going to do for tea, what shopping you need to get. It has to be a quiet place and space for you to be able to work in. Believe me, I've tried to work when I've not been in the mood and it's not worth the effort. Wait until you've got the time, the right frame of mind and the right space to be able to work in. There's lots of things you can do to enhance your workspace as well. We'll perhaps touch on that another time. Nice gentle music may be something that you would enjoy. I hope these 3 tips have helped, and if I think of some more, which I'm fairly sure I will do, I will share those with you as well. I'd really be interested to know your comments and your feedback on your journey, things that you've perhaps discovered to be really useful tips that other people may not know about that will benefit from for lots of people. If you have any comments, please do. If you've enjoyed this, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and I will look forward to seeing you for more videos very soon. Thanks again. Bye bye.